Welcome, Amplify You family, to another great episode of Amplify You. My name is Michelle, your host, and today I am joined by Kerri Hummingbird. Welcome, Kerri. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for inviting me, Michelle. I'm delighted to be here and inspire people.
Yes, absolutely. So Kerri is an author. She's a speaker, a coach. You are also the host of the Soul Nectar Show and the founder of the Skills Not Pills movement. So we're going to dive into all sorts of things today. This is kind of a mix of behind the scenes or behind the mic interview with Kerri and also an Ask the Expert, because you have some really great tools I think will be really helpful for our podcasters out there.
Awesome.
So let's dive in, Kerri. I'd love to hear, first of all, a little bit about your show, Souls of Nectar.
Soul Nectar Show, I started about 4 years ago on an inspiration from spirit. I felt it deep in my soul. I was like, okay, I need to start something talking about spiritual concepts and discussions that I don't see people out there having. And I want to go deep into the deep ocean part of that conversation, and I want to talk about people's journeys and mystical experiences and far out realizations and just about how it ripples out into every part of your life and everything gets turned upside down, and so nothing's out. Everything is welcome on my show in terms of people's journeys. So they come on, they share their moment of awakening or their path of awakening, and then we launch into whatever discussion feels guided by spirit. And so it's all in the moment. It's all just natural conversation, getting to know this person, and then wherever the conversation's guided. So because of that, the show has all kinds of discussions about spirituality, which are really profound. So I always learn and grow from the interviews, which I love. I think that's important as a podcaster. You got to enjoy it. You got to learn. You got to be growing as well, and be expanding yourself.
Well, that's why we do it, right? As a host, that's really like out of our own curiosity to really interview people, find out more about what they're doing, grow ourselves. And I think that's great. Do you ever find, because it's like a topic that's kind of like a personal topic to a lot of people, do you find it hard to find guests, or how do you normally find your guests?
I have a plethora of guests. They just, how it is when you're aligned with what you're supposed to be doing. They just pop out of nowhere. And actually, I'm really excited because this past year that I've gotten some support from a friend who has been reaching out to different podcasts to share my message in my book of the second wave. And, because of that, I've met amazing people because of that, I've met amazing people, and I get to interview all these people on my show too. So it's like, I feel like when you feel called to purpose and you feel that deep stirring, then you're just connected with people synchronistically that are sharing your part of the journey or also feel called. And the waves of goodness just keep rippling out. I mean, it's just kind of amazing to me. I'm so blessed every single time I get a call with somebody. Wow, thank you, Bonnie.
That's awesome.
My assistant, she's so awesome because she just connected me with these amazing people. So I'm having a great time.
Yeah, I find podcasters in general are so cool. There's some amazing people out there. And, I think you're right. Once you're aligned with your message, it's just the magnetism of the people that you're attracting to you. We were laughing just before we pressed record, and that, I have probably worked with about 10 shows this year that have the word soul in them. And I'm that's really, a part of my, I think, spiritual awakening too, is getting to work with podcasters that have all these spiritual gifts and all these spiritual messages. And I love it. I feel like I've definitely up-leveled my own spiritual self in the last over the last year and a half, working with so many incredible healers and teachers as clients, which is super
well. You
cool.
can almost see the divine symphony of it. You can just see how we're all just being tuned and as instruments, and we're all waking up and we're feeling called to use our voices, and we're all we're having a similar experience in different bodies. So so soul is kind of an important thing right now because this is the Great Awakening. So
Absolutely.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So what's going on consciously in the world right now that's making everyone kind of rise up as leaders, and the consciousness level in the universe right now? What can you just, maybe for people who don't, it's new to them or they're not really understanding what's happening right now, can you just kind of explain a little bit about what's happening universally right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's lots of avenues into this discussion, but I think the biggest avenue is that, the earth is at a place where humanity has um, created some discord,
Mhm.
and it can't continue, right? And so the earth knows what to do to wake us up. The earth knows what to do to get us to realize that now we're becoming an imbalance in the field, and we need to come back into harmony. So we got the coronavirus, and then we
Mhm.
got shut down, and then we're going to launch into chaos. And so that's one avenue of looking at it. Like, there's the movement that happens through each one of our bodies just because we
Mhm.
are made of earth. We are connected to the earth. The earth is a consciousness, and she knows what she needs and she knows what she doesn't need. And she knows when she needs to wake us up to get us to stop doing whatever it is we're doing, so that we can survive. There's been, like, I think 5 extinctions up till now. This is the 6th. So let's not extinct ourselves by being stupid. We need to wake up. So the other way to look at it is astrology predicts all of this in the stars. So if you get into astrology, you start to see
Mhm.
how all of this has been predicted for a long time. Indigenous people have had these prophecies for thousands of years. So we've all known that this is coming. It's just, how do we know that? Well, we look at the stars, and then the stars tell us a lot of things. So that's why astrology is so fascinating. And then for my own journey, last year I channeled the Second Wave book, the Second Wave, Transcending the Human Drama.
Mhm.
And I said, well, what's the second wave? And as it turns out, the second wave is part of a teaching that Dolores Cannon started sharing when she was alive, decades of work in human consciousness, studying hypnosis, really deep hypnosis technique, that she was able to actually tap into the subconscious of people's being, the soul level, to ask questions. And when she started interviewing people at the soul level in this hypnosis state, they started talking about, I'm a member of the first wave, I'm a member of the second wave. And so she asked, well, what is that? And apparently, this is beings of light from other places in the universe that came to Earth at this time to support Earth's transition of humanity into higher consciousness.
Mhm.
And the only way to do that is from the inside out. So people in the second wave are the second. So you could think the first wave is like the 60s, right? Like, if you've heard the Age of Aquarius song, you know that those
Mhm.
people are definitely alien. Like, there's no way that those people were human, okay? Like, they were in human bodies, but they were carrying a vibration that was really ascended for the time
Mhm.
that they were living in. And now we're the second wave. Those of us who felt like life has been pretty tough, difficult, our families, patterns, stuff we were dealing with was like really thick and heavy and difficult and, toxic and all that kind of stuff. And then we're driven towards healing and self-reclamation, and knowing that love is better than this. Like, this is
Mhm.
not love what I'm experiencing. Love is something else. I'm going to keep moving towards that. Those kinds of people, if you're in that category, you're probably one of the second wave, especially if you're one of these people that say, you know what, I need to start a podcast with the word soul in it.
Yeah.
You're in that category, so, because it's time to wake up, and you probably started waking up a few years ago, feeling that
Mhm.
deep call to purpose. Like, the time is now. I've got to use my voice. I have to speak up. I can't stay quiet. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but whatever it is, I got to start doing it now, because now is the time. That's it.
Yeah.
Here we are. Now is the time.
Now is the time. And now is the time even more so than ever. Everyone is wanting to use their voice and rise up and share their message with the world. And it's no better time than now to do that, right? So I can imagine you have a plethora of guests for your show. And is there any particular thing that you try to convey in your podcast with each of the guests? Is it like their spiritual awakening? It's like the story behind that, or what is it that you guys do with your guests?
Well, their spiritual story is the entry point. So I start every guest saying, please share with the audience your own story of how you believe you started waking up. Because of course, when we start looking at it, we can pull out lots of threads about, like, oh, well, that was a wake up moment, and that was a wake up moment, and that was a wake up moment, and this other one over here. But what's cool is that you get to decide, what was my real wake up call. So everybody comes on and they start off at that point. What do you want to talk about today? What was your wake-up call that got you to the place you are today, doing what you love, doing it aligned with your purpose, feeling passionate, using your voice? What was that thing? We talk there, and then of course everything unfolds, and I love the unfolding conversation. I'm much more interested in that than anything rigid. We don't do anything rigid on my show. It's just a
I
natural
don't
flow.
think you
It's just
can with
like
that
to
topic.
have a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And I think like podcast listeners really enjoy that too. Like they really like to hear like their the insider information and hearing the inside stories of what's happening with your guests and their stories and things like that. I think that's really cool. So tell us a little bit more about what you do in your work outside of your podcast. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the Skills Not Pills movement and a little bit more about your book and what you do normally outside of podcasting as your expert.
Yeah, so the Skills Not Pills movement I started a number of years ago because my journey included decades of psychotherapy, trying to fix myself and fit into other people's ideas about who I should be. And, I have a wide range of emotional expression, being a person that's a deep feeler. I like to call my big feelers, like you're a big feeler, there's nothing wrong with feeling. It's just, not everybody has the same capacity or the same muscle strength of feeling as others. And so I really exercise that feeling muscle. So, so I was in psychotherapy quite a bit, and I was taking those pills to not feel, because that was everyone's solution. Well, just don't feel,
Mm.
And the thing I realized after, decades of doing this is that every time I tried to go off those pills, I would cry. I'd be like, well, why am I crying? Well, because I was upset the whole time, but I was hiding it from myself. So it was still happening. I was still feeling, but I wasn't expressing. And so it was just getting stuck in my body and causing disease. So I finally found a different path. I walked away from that whole life that I was living, and I found a new path. And the path I found was a spiritual path, a path of healing, a path of feeling my feelings and acknowledging my inner experience and listening to the voices within and all of the things I teach people now. And so that's why I started the Skills Not Pills movement, because I think a lot of people in our culture, they get one message, they get like shoved down their throats, like this is the one way to solve all of your problems. You go to the doctor, you get a prescription, you take your pill, period.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that, for the rest of your life. And I disagree. That's not been my experience. I think there's a lot of other ways to solve health challenges and mental health challenges. And and I think that spirit is a big part of that. So I speak out about that. So that's what that movement is about. And in my personal life, I just love hearing people's journeys. I feel like there's no one size fits all. There's no one size fits all to anybody's journey. Your journey with cancer would be different than somebody else's journey with cancer, than somebody else's journey with cancer. This is a very personal experience, all of these things. And so we need to regard it as such. So I'm also an author and a channel, and I channeled the book, The Second Wave, Transcending the Human Drama, last year. It has been an international bestseller since it got published. Mm-hmm. It's still going, 10 months now, something like that. So
awesome.
Wow. Cool. It's good to be aligned.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. And that was your second book too? That's not your first book, right?
That's my third book. So
your third book, great.
Yeah, my first book was Awakening to Me, One Woman's Journey to Self-Love. In that book, I wrote, kind of journaled about my experience of waking up from the bottom of my pit of despair, and leaving my former relationship and walking out of psychotherapy and the whole mess, and starting to open up to this spiritual journey. So I wrote that book for 2 years. I kept trying to finish that book, and then spirit was like, nope, you're not done. Nope, you're not there yet. So I kept having to add chapters, and it was a very long process. But 2 years later, I finished that book, published it, and it's won a bunch of awards. And then the next one I did was From We to Me, because I really wanted to explore that topic of the end of a relationship and just all the things. I was in a relationship for 20 years. I was married, and then all of a sudden I was single in my 40s. Like, it's so weird
Yeah.
to be a single, person in a relationship for 20 years, and then all of a sudden be, to be married for 20 years and all of a sudden be a single person at 40. That's just weird.
Mm-hmm.
Dating
Yeah.
is weird at 40. So, I wanted to talk about that, and I wanted to talk about, just what I realized in retrospect from our relationship and the dynamics that I went through. So that book, From We to Me, is helpful to some people. And then this second wave book was completely different, because it was a channeled book.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, stepping deeper into my actual purpose. And so it's just cool. I think I love expressing myself. And I think that anyone out there who's like expressing yourself with your voice,
Mm-hmm.
it's important to let yourself express however that muse moves you.
Yeah. Were there things that like you did at the very beginning? I feel like some people maybe come and want to do a podcast, but they're a little bit nervous about like maybe that spiritual side of them they haven't really exposed. They haven't really talked about it much like in public, maybe that, their circle of influence doesn't really know about that side about them. Any advice for those people that are sitting here thinking, yeah, I would love to do that, but like, I don't know.
Well, I got to say, it's really liberating. So my name before was not Kerri Hummingbird.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for 20 years in high tech as a technical communicator and working in, really dry API references and working with programmers and all kinds of stuff. And so these people expected a certain amount of seriousness from me, And so when I went off and changed my name on social media, and then LinkedIn to Kerri Hummingbird, people were kind of like, what just happened? Like, who is she now? What is going on? And, the fact of the matter is it didn't take very long for people to adapt because that's actually true about me. Like, my name and my resonance, when I say it, is very accurate about my presence. So pretty quickly, even my engineer friends were like, yep, that's pretty accurate, and they just sort of accepted it. That's just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, you got to follow your heart. You've got to follow that voice inside of you that's guiding you, yourself, your soul, and do as that soul instructs you to do. That is what you need to do. You got to listen to that inner guidance and follow. And it's always going to lead you on a path of a higher path, a path that's going to cause difficulty for you as an ego. It's going to cause you to feel humiliated or exposed or, raw or ridiculous, and that's just all your ego getting pulled back. So, it's never going to ask you to do anything to hurt another person. That's just never going to happen. That's not your soul. That's something else. So your soul is going to ask you to do things that are personally uncomfortable, but are beneficial for you and others. And so I say, follow it, do it. It always opens up better doorways.
Yeah, it's always, I was just going to say, I'm like, it's always going to be better on the other side of that. Awesome.
Absolutely. Take the leap.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be afraid to say, your voice is needed out there. That's something that I'm passionate about in my life is that, you have a message that needs to get out there and like, you've got to be brave enough to stand up and really say your message. And it's going to change lives, right? So I think everyone's here for that purpose. How do you help people get closer to their purpose, finding their purpose? That's a loaded question, but
it is a loaded question. So, well, what I found is that when people are ready, they'll usually people lurk and watch my podcast for a while, and they watch all the episodes and they soak it all in and they just let their mind be expanded and they go, oh, wow, and they get sort of like that realization candy, and then at some point it's got to move out of the candy phase into like a nutritious meal, at some point people say, you know what, I've been listening to this for a while. I really enjoyed the candy. I need to get to work. I'm ready on this. Then they join with me. So either individual mentoring. I have a whole process that I bring people through called Reinvent Yourself. And, I've toyed with changing it to Discover Yourself. So I don't know what I like better, Discover Yourself or Reinvent Yourself, because reinvent, it feels really cool. It's like, oh, I'm inventing myself. This is so cool.
This time you get to choose.
Yeah, and at some level that's true. You are sort of inventing yourself. But then who's doing the inventing, So we explore kind of this process of clearing away the conditioning, because from the time we're little, even in our mother's womb, we are being woven in a web of someone's reality. So you're basking in your mom's womb, and you're growing as a fetus, and as you're doing that, you're being woven into a web of her reality, and you're being woven into a web of your father's reality, who's sleeping right next to her in her energy field. So learning how to decipher what's yours and what's the conditioning, what's authentic to your soul and yourself, and what's conditioning that you chose to take on in this lifetime, is really powerful, because it's a journey of really looking under the covers to see ourselves more clearly. And like, for example, a conversation that's really up right now is around racism. And so I'm starting a new podcast with some friends of mine, my husband included, about healing racism. And part of the process of healing racism is becoming aware about all the little insidious ways that it permeates itself into your mind and into your perceptions, so that you can start to spot those things and show up differently with it. So it's the same, like when people are working with me, we're looking under the hood. We're like, okay, what's in here? Like, is that you? Is that authentically you? Or is that just something you've been saying and doing because it was what you were taught, and it became familiar, and then it became your confirmation bias on how you think the world is? Let's disrupt that, and let's dissolve it, and let's open up to something more true. Yes, and awesome. The biggest imagery of it is, the butterfly. So people come in as caterpillars. When they come to work with me, they come as caterpillars. They're all nice and, nourished with all those leaves they ate, like consume, and they come into the cocoon, and they start letting it all go. So everything, and the truth of the matter is the cocoon is a very messy place. It's liquidy. It's just like soup, by the time we're done. But the cool thing is, in that state of disintegration, and I believe that we're doing that collectively right now. You can see it across the whole collective, just challenging everything, questioning everything, like just being curious about all of it, is that then the imaginal cells start to form the butterfly. The imaginal cells start to form the butterfly, not like our conditioning. The spirit forms the butterfly. So by the time people leave, they've gone through the whole process of like, okay, becoming aware that there's something I need to look at and decondition myself, and then letting it go and becoming a messy soup, and then letting the imaginal cells take over, and then becoming the butterfly on that thing so I can be even more free. It's a cycle. It's a spiral.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. That's a great analogy of it too, because I feel like the cocoon is like, something tight, and like maybe like, they're trying to, like, the caterpillar is trying to get out of it, right? Into this beautiful
get
butterfly.
Me out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
It's uncomfortable.
I love that. Yeah. So Kerri, where can we find more information about working with you, more information about what you're up to on social media and all those great places?
Well, you can find me at Kerri Hummingbird, Kerri Hummingbird, just about on all the platforms. And my website is kerrihummingbird.com, so Kerri hummingbird.com. And Soul Nectar Show is my show, and you can find that at my website, kerrihummingbird.com, but you can also go to soulnectar.show, SOUL nectar.show.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for bringing some light to our podcast today. It's been great getting to know you. And guys, go check out our show, leave a review, listen, and expand your mind. And when you're ready to speak your voice, come back and see me, and we'll get your podcast going.
Yes, thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
More voices out there.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Kerri, for joining us today. Amplify You family. Look forward to seeing you again next week on our show. Take care.